Hey guys, I'm Robert and I'd like to welcome you back to the channel. Today is an interesting one for me because I've sold the Pista. A lot of you guys have followed me through the entire process of buying the Pista, modifying the Pista, being at some points very frustrated with the car, and then getting it to where it needed to be and really enjoying the car. And then a couple of you guys were surprised when I actually announced that I was selling it and that the car was gone. I thought that I would take this time to go through maybe a little bit of the story of the 488 Pista and share that with you guys. And I think if you know about me and you know about this channel, you know that it's not just about me throwing out there, oh my gosh, I sold the Pista, here's how much money I made, here's how much it cost. I would actually rather take and interact with you guys and see what you want to know about the process. As many of you had been there since when I spec'd the car and when I was waiting on delivery and things like that. So maybe it's actually a little bit more of a part of the journey for you guys to ask the questions that you actually had about the car, as opposed to me throwing out some clickbait and going that route. But first of all, I would say it was maybe 3 or 4 months ago. I told you guys that I was going to do some things that I want to do on this channel, and one of them is that I really do enjoy cocktails and making cocktails and trying different things. And I told you I was going to start sharing a few of those with you. I said maybe at some point we'll talk about barbecue grilling and different types of meat preparation and stuff like that, but we're not quite there yet. We're going to stick with the easy stuff, the cocktails. I will maybe make 1 or 2 cocktails a week just to try different things. One of the ones that I really like is called a Chelsea Sidecar. It consists of 3 parts gin, 2 parts Cointreau, 1 part lemon juice, and then you go ahead and you put a lemon twist and a lemon slice on the top, just as a little bit of a garnish. When you do the lemon twist, you can actually do it over, twist the zest over the cocktail, and it'll actually bring a little bit of the juice out of it into the cocktail. But it's something that I really like. You're supposed to then mix all the ingredients in a shaker, shake it on ice really well, and strain it out into either a martini glass or a goblet or something along those lines. Sometimes I leave the ice in it that I shook it in, and sometimes I strain it out like I did today. But it's a very good drink. I like it a lot. I hope you guys maybe try it and tell me what you think of it as well. I haven't had it yet, so let's see. Yeah, very good. So 3 parts gin, 2 parts Cointreau, 1 part lemon juice. Put the lemons on top. Obviously, after you're garnishing it, shake it, pour it in, strain it, or leave the ice in if you like. I'm American, we like ice in a lot of things, so you know how that is. But what I've done today, I don't know if many of you guys know this, is that I don't prepare for any of my videos. It probably, let's put it this way, I've done it one time. I've actually sat down and said, I'm gonna maybe make a little list of how I wanna go through this, and I didn't like it. I really disliked how the video came out, and we never published it. All of the videos that we do, I sit down and I think of the things I want to say just as a general, and I just go off the top of my head and I go with it. So I was thinking, okay, should I make a list of all the questions you guys have and then sort them out and everything like that? And when you do that, you try to bring a structure in, and you're not focused, or maybe you're too focused and you lose a little bit of that fluidness that I think is really important when having a conversation. And a lot of this is me wanting to have a conversation with you guys. So the best way to do that is I made a post on, I guess it was 3 weeks ago, that the Pista was being sold, and I'd like you guys to ask some questions. So I've got a nice list of questions here. It's actually the Instagram comments that you guys had left, and I'm just gonna go through. I'm gonna scroll through really quickly and I'm gonna answer them. Like I said, I actually haven't even read all these comments yet, so some of this is gonna be new to me in terms of what you asked. So it'll just be very spontaneous and we'll go through it. So the first comment was for Mr. JWW. Has it been 2 years already? Wow, time flies. Yes, it has. James has been talking about coming to the Nürburgring since before I got the Pista. He made it one time and I wasn't there. And then the whole COVID lockdown has come. And if you think about it, we're already a year into this whole COVID situation. And yes, time flies. It's absolutely insane how quick things go. But here we are. We can't change it, right? So we've got to adapt and move on. Hope to see another Ferrari in your collection in the future. That will absolutely happen. I've actually found a Lusso that I'm interested in. It looks exactly like the Pista. Obviously it doesn't have the stripe, but the same Grigio Silverstone color. Same interior with the dark, with the black leather, and then yellow stripes as well. Really sharp car, so I'm trying to see if we can work out a deal on that. Maybe you'll see that in the garage very soon. That is something I would definitely like to have. Actually, these three questions are all talking about that. I don't know what, I don't know what to say, but why did we only drive 3 laps together in that Pista? I've got a lot of people at the Nürburgring that were fortunate enough to come out for some laps with me on the car, and we had a lot of fun, and nobody got out saying, oh, what a piece of junk, you know. It was a lot of fun. The sheer acceleration that the car brought, it really was special, and I had a lot of fun with that. Let's see, what do we got here? We've got a lot of crying faces and things like that. Did I ever calculate the average fuel consumption? Actually, I've never sat down and calculated it, but I do know what the car does based on the actual usage. I know how large the fuel tank is, and I know after doing laps, I know how much fuel you need to put in it. The car will do about 5 to 6 laps on 1 tank of fuel, and when you go to fill it up, you're putting in around 65 liters. It does work out to somewhere around 50 liters per 100 kilometers. And on the road, you could do somewhere between 11 to 14 liters per 100 kilometer if you're driving conservatively, just as with any car that's over 700 horsepower, over any horsepower really. The more you push on the road, the worse it's going to get. So if on the track you're pushing close to 50 liters per 100 kilometer, on the road you can go from anywhere maybe 10, 11 all the way up. These modern turbo engines with that are relatively small displacement compared to the big old naturally aspirated motors, they're actually quite efficient when you're just cruising. They're not making any boost, and they turn into really a small displacement engine at that point. So they can be quite efficient. We just drove the GT2 down to Italy, and on the whole trip, 1,000 kilometers, the car averaged 11.4 liters per 100 kilometers. So I think that's very, very respectable. And one thing I will tell you is that the 488 and the 488 Pista are 2 cars that I've noticed how well they run on the highway. They're very responsive, but they also get very good fuel efficiency. So that's very, very positive. Is this the 500 kilometer an hour Pista? Asking for a friend. 531 actually was how fast I went in the Pista. All of the Ferraris that you've owned, how does this rank with the rest of them? Yours was, oh, that's very nice, or is one of the nicest spec pieces I've ever seen. Thank you for that. You know, this car is absolutely beautiful. It's a car that my wife and I spent a lot of time thinking about the spec on. I knew it wasn't going to be red. We went through maybe black with yellow and a lot of different things, and we landed on this spec. And looking at it, I'm really proud of how it came out. It's something I really like, and many, many people said it's one of the best spec pieces they've seen. Obviously, that's subjective. I've seen so many cars that I look at, I'm like, man, that thing's beautiful. I should have done that. But I think that this is a very nice, it's a conservative look, and it goes a little bit away from your typical Ferrari, which everyone says the first Ferrari is red, and then after that you start going different ways, and that was the case for me. The first one was red, and the next one was Grigio Titania, which is my FF, which is a very beautiful car as well. Let's see, this is a good one. Not that you need to state figures, but did it depreciate or did it appreciate for you? Well, we are living in a world right now where there's so many cars that come out. We have today, or just last couple of days, the new V6 hybrid McLaren was announced, and it's right on the heels of the people getting their first Elbas and the P1 GTRs coming out, or I'm sorry, Senna GTRs coming out. And you've got all of these cars that are coming out. You've got the Ferrari with the 812, I think it's like the GTS, and then Superfast, the GTS, and then you've got the Superfast, and then you've got the SF90 and then the SF90 Spider, right on the heels of the F8 and the F8 Spider, and all these different cars that are coming out. We know that's not going to be very long until you have the F8 Speciale or Pista or whatever they want to call it. And then you've got the Roma, right? So you've got all these different cars that are coming out, and people who aren't car collectors, or maybe even people that can't have more than one car but are interested in having the newest and the greatest car, they're looking at all these new cars and saying, my goodness, what is happening to my residuals? Am I even going to be able to afford to ever get out of this car? And it is a big problem. It's a huge problem with all of these cars that are coming out. Right now, McLaren being one of, in this segment, obviously there's cars that are worse, maybe Range Rovers or something like that, I don't know. But as a percentage basis, McLarens are one of the worst, but I will have to say that Ferrari is one of the best. Ferrari has been very, very good in terms of the residuals and how the the resale of the cars are, I'm something that I can say it's probably one of the best cars for somebody to get into who is worried about what can I sell it for later. On my 488 GTB, I lost when I sold it within a year, maybe 30,000 euro. If it was a McLaren, you could have darn near been in 6 digits at that point with what you could have seen as a loss. The question continues, with all of the track use that you did, did you have to really take a beating on the car? How did it work out when you tried to sell the car in terms of the customers, and did they know the car was used on the track, etc.? So it's actually 2 questions right next to each other that are on the same line. And that's actually very interesting. When I went to sell the Pista, I knew that because of the marketing that we do, the car was never an Apex car, it was never a taxi, but it lived at Apex. It was a car that I left there. It was a car that everybody saw. When it went on the track, I did videos with it. I took Tim Burton out and I let him drive it, so it was on his channel. I did videos with Misha that did quite well. There's videos on my channel where we're doing nice quick laps and having a lot of fun in the car. So there was not one person that looked at the car to buy it that didn't know whose car it was and did not know the history of it. So when they would ask a question, it was obviously sold through a Ferrari dealer, and they were very open about it. Obviously they have to be, but the question was never, was the car ever tracked? The question was, how many laps did Robert do with this car on the track? That was how the question was formatted. And we went back and I gave my accurate number. I went through and tallied it up and looked within probably 3 or 4 laps. I was able to tell him what I did with it. But when we spoke about it and we listed the car for sale, we knew immediately that this was going to be the case. This is what it's like when I sell any of my cars. There's no real way around it. And we said right off the bat, okay, we're going to look online and we're going to find the most reasonable price that we can and start there. And I did not start shooting for the moon because I knew that it wouldn't be, it's not how it should be. It's not how I should present it. The car was very well taken care of. The car was very well maintained. As you know, at Apex, we have Pete there. He details the cars. The car's been wrapped immediately, very well taken care of, polished, coated, everything you can imagine. So the car was in perfect shape inside and out. It's funny because a lot of people think that just because a car is used on the track that it's beat up and everything like that, but it's not. The interior gets very little use. I get in, I strap myself in. I've never had food in the car. I've never had drinks in the car. The car doesn't get dusty because it's kept with the windows up all the time. You're not opening the door in all these different weather conditions and tracking dust and dirt in. So my cars, the interior of them actually look brand new by the time it's done. And the other thing that's funny is they stay relatively low kilometers. If I go out on a weekend and do 5 laps with a car, on a Saturday and then maybe 6 laps on Sunday, that's only 250, 300 kilometers that I'm knocking out with the car over the weekend. If I took the car on a road trip, I'd be stopping at gas stations, getting in and out, putting bags in it. The only thing that I ever put in the trunk of the Pista was a computer. When I was going up to Apex, I just put it in there kind of as a little joke. There's some video, I think on Misha's channel, of the computer in it and watching a lap video of the Pista because the track was closed. But a computer is the only thing that ever went in the trunk, and that was just one time the entire time that I had that car. So it goes to show that these cars might be getting used heavily on the track, but that's what they're made to do. So how did I fare on the sale of the car? Another person asked, was the investment worth it? And I have to tell you, yes, it absolutely was. It goes back to what I said a moment ago about Ferrari being one of the few cars this day and age that actually holds up in value. The 488 Pista, I did actually sell slightly over what I paid for the car. And that's amazing if you think about 2 years later, I used the car on track and I was able to sell it for more than I paid for it. That's unbelievable. Anyone that has a Pista needs to thank Ferrari for having, over the last how many years, built a brand that can do that and can be desirable enough that you're able to actually maintain a value. Now, one thing that you guys need to understand and think, oh my gosh, Robert's cleaning up on Ferraris. No. What do you have to do to get that relationship? You have to have X number of cars. You have to buy different vehicles. You don't just walk in and buy only the special cars and nothing else. If you look at all these guys that have all these special cars, they're driving the Roma already. They're driving, you know, they've bought an 812, they've bought an FF, they've bought a Lusso, they've bought all these cars, and those cars definitely depreciate more than the specials increase, unless maybe you get lucky occasionally with something like an F12 TDF, which for a while people were able to sell at twice the purchase price. But as a whole, the increased or profit that you might make on one car simply is offsetting the losses that you might make on another car. But I can tell you that in my view right now, the two strongest brands for that in Europe, at least from what I've seen, are Ferrari and Porsche actually, which is interesting because Porsche produces a lot of cars, but the GT3 RS and the GT2 RS maintain a very strong value. So something for you guys to think about as you're looking at cars and wanting to see what you want to do next, right? Let's see. So we've got a lot of good questions here. Jokes even. Never even saw it on track. Such a shame. So more questions about the value of the car after I sold it, which we just answered, which was really good. Weren't you planning on selling it soon after delivery? And why did you end up keeping it so long? It's a really good question. Yes, I did. When I got the car, I first took it on track and I was just completely dismayed. I was so upset and I was so frustrated with the car. It understeered like crazy. It just didn't feel good. I've gotten many cars new and I've had to do some adjustments and tweaks, but this was probably one of the worst setups, I would say, that I had from the factory. And you know, I look back on it and it's kind of silly because what I would do with any car right away would be go do an alignment and set it up. But the alignment was so bad that it just was beyond me that could have been the problem. It understeered so bad and it felt so poor just in so many points. It just felt like everything was wrong with the car. And by the time we ended up getting it in and getting alignment, it was a night and day difference. It was, I think it had 0.7 degrees of camber from the factory, and we got the front end up to maybe 1.7, 1.8, and that helped so much. And I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but we were trying to keep it reasonable because it's not about lap times. It was about, you know, also enjoying it on the road a little bit and doing things like that. But the alignment was so terrible that I drove it once. I said, I want to get rid of this. I don't want to keep this car. And this is actually a problem with having so many cars that you end up taking on the track and you do things with. So what I did after that was I just parked it and I went and I started driving the 675 again. And I spent some time in the Schirmer BMWs and the M4 at that time. And then I was driving my E92 M3, the XX31 car. And if this Pista was my only car, I probably would have said, okay, I need to fix this now. I'm going to take it in. We're going to go to Manti Racing. We're going to get the alignment set up and this thing's going to work. But the benefit sometimes of having a car is when one breaks, you can drive the others. But when one isn't working right, maybe you don't focus enough on it and say, you know what, I'm going to work on this car and I'm going to go take it and I'm going to get this right. I had a bad taste in my mouth. I set it aside and it was just annoying. And then one day I would say, oh, I'm going to go drive the Pista and just take it for a lap. I'd get frustrated and I'd park it again. And just like that, 8-10 months goes by and you have in the back of your mind that you're not happy with this car. And at that point, it is your own fault for doing so, and it was my own fault. I was able to put my attention towards cars that I knew worked, that I had already had set up and were already working the way that I wanted them to, and that honestly wasn't fair to the Pista, I have to say, but that's the way that it happened. So one might say, Robert, you were extra hard on Ferrari for not delivering a car the way you liked when all you had to do was an alignment, and to that I might say, yes, you're right, but on the other hand, I would say, Ferrari, please don't build a 488 Pista, the peak, the best car, and put an alignment on it that, I mean, maybe if I was going to drive like around the world, I could do it 3 times on one set of tires with that alignment. Make it to where, deliver the car in a way that we're going to get the performance out of it that we would expect. Yes, I understand the car has to understeer, but it also needs to turn, right? So there's 2 sides to it. I definitely know that I should have looked at it a little bit more closely at the beginning, but I was able to put it aside and move to other cars. And I was able to say, okay, let me go drive it real quick, get annoyed with it, put it aside. So why did I keep it so long? I finally, this spring, I finally said, okay, I got to do this. I got to get the alignment on it. Did the alignment on it. I got it to drive the way I wanted, got the camber set up, got the toe set up, was able to get it to where it was almost a taste more towards oversteer than understeer. And I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun to drive. The way you could put the power on, bring it into a power slide, pull the power right out of the turn and straighten it up with your right foot. It was so cool. It was so special. And I had a lot of fun with it. However, I knew that it was still a car that I wasn't driving as much. It was hands down, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful cars in the fleet. The blue 675 Spider is another one that I think compares to it in terms of beauty. They're completely different looking cars, different styles. The Mexico blue's in your face. This is more elegant and subdued. And even looking at it now, it's probably one of the most beautiful cars that I've ever had. And I stand by that. But when I'm done with something, I'm done with it. And I was done driving the car. I had a ton of fun with the car during the COVID lockdown. I was doing some road driving with it and checking things out. And then right when the track opened again, the track was really quiet. And I got to go out and do some really fun laps with the car. And I had so much fun with it. And I said, you know what? I'm on a good note with the car. I'm happy with the car. I'm not a car collector. There's other things that I want to move on to. And it taught me something. And that was that I might have too many cars with the way that I like to use them. I don't like to go out and sit and look at them in the garage. I don't look at them in the barn. I like to drive the cars on the track. And the simple fact was that the Pista taught me that I need to focus more on a couple cars that I do want to drive so that I can get the most out of them. And that was when the 620R came, and I was able to do that with the 620R. I've sat down and I've made 4 alignment adjustments already, tweaking camber, toe, front and rear, just getting everything the way that I want it. We're now working on sway bars to adjust the sway bars so that we can roll better, to limit understeer and different things like that. And the Pista really was what urged me to do that. So it was the right thing to do, letting the Pista go. So I hope that answers that, and not too long. I want to know the real cost of ownership for the time period as the net loss by driving and reselling. As I mentioned a moment ago, I made a little bit of money on the sale price, but I did have to buy a new rear diffuser, which cost a rear diffuser from Ferraris around 12,000 euro. I did scrape it on a curb somewhere. Might have been Vipperman, I don't know. But the rear diffuser did get scraped. I had to replace the brakes, and I've put 3 sets of tires on the car. 2 that I used, and then 1 brand new set that I put on when selling the car. I put 1 set of brake pads on the car. I would say all of that, diffuser, brakes, tires, etc., we're probably looking at around maybe a little over 20,000 euro for those consumables. The car has Ferrari 7-year service included, which again, for you guys that are getting into buying a supercar, that's something that is really cool that Ferrari does, is service for 7 years. That takes care of oil changes and inspections. It doesn't do consumables. It's not doing brake pads. It's not doing tires. That's on you. But I really like that. When I take the McLarens in, every single year when I take a McLaren in, I'm looking at a couple thousand euro for service and inspection. There's always some little thing that McLaren needs to have done to it, whether it be a valve or you know, just an oil change or things like that. And I think you're looking at maybe 1,500 to 2,000 euro by the time you leave. Every Ferrari I've ever had, I've not had one cost at service. Drop the car off, they service it, they pick it up. They say, oh yeah, but you're gonna pay for it, you know, it's in the price of the car. That's fine. The Pista costs less than the 675 Coupe, and the Pista costs less than the 675 LT Spider. It costs similar to what the 620R did. I don't think I'm going to complain about the price of the Pista by any means. And having the 7-year service included, I think is absolutely fantastic. I think it's really one of the cool features that Ferrari offers. So for me, I would say on the car, I probably was break even by the time I bought, sold, put parts in it. We'll leave fuel and all that stuff out of it, but I was probably pretty close to break even, which I think is really cool. So let's see. Another, oh my gosh, it's been 2 years already. Yes, it has. It's insane, isn't it? What do I think about a Liberty Walk conversion from Ferrari? I don't want to talk about that. I do not like that. I think it's I don't know. Obviously, everyone tunes different things. I've taken an M4 and it's got a wide body. It's a race car. It's a race car. We're doing some work on our Seat Leon Cupra right now, and we're putting slightly wider fenders on it, and I think that's cool. But on those cars even, I'm not going to bolt on fenders and Sawzall out the bottoms, and I don't like what they're doing with the cars. It's not something that I appreciate. But if you like it, knock your lights out. I'm not going to say to you anything negative about your car, other than that you probably know I don't like it that much, right? Let's see, do roof scoops add horsepower? Okay, not about Pista ownership. Roof scoops do not add horsepower. 620R, 600 LT, 675 Coupe have no more power with the roof scoop. the turbos are creating much more boost than you could ram in with the roof scoop. Even a naturally aspirated motor, it's sucking air in. That's pulling in way more it's pulling at a much higher velocity than the air could be rammed in with a roof scoop. So no, those cars are not making more power with the roof scoop. What do I think about the fact that they've produced so many Pistas? Did I take a bigger loss on this car than the Speciale? Thank you for the content. I think what I mentioned earlier would tell you that I don't care how many Pistas they make. Ferrari's built a brand that there are more people that want the Pista than they can produce in this time frame. Even if they build 3,000 of them, if I can get out of the car in 2 years and break even, they could make 100 more, 500 more. I'm not concerned about that. I would even be happy if I only lost 30 or 40,000 euro in 2 years on that car. So that means they could even build more. McLaren is building 765 765s, and those numbers will not even be close, and they're going to build what, maybe a quarter of the number of the Pistas. So no, as long as Ferrari's keeping an eye on their market and they know what their market looks like, and they can keep these residual values under control like they have, then I'm perfectly happy with them knocking their lights out. How difficult is it to buy a Ferrari for the first time? I think that really depends on your market. I would tell you that here in Europe, probably not that hard. It's definitely good maybe to go get a relationship with one dealer. I work with Frankfurt Ferrari, and when I'm looking at Lusos right now, yes, I'm going to buy a Lusso secondhand, or I'm going to buy a car that's never been registered. That would be my preference. But I can tell you that if I go on mobile.de right now, which is the car sales for Germany, really, there's probably maybe 150 Lusos on there, and I can definitely find the exact Lusso that I want right now. However, I will not buy any of them because I will only buy a car from Frankfurt Ferrari, and the reason for that is because I have a relationship with them, right? I can get a Pista from them, I can get a Speciale from them. I could get SF90 if I wanted to. I could get SF90 Spider if I wanted to. And all these things that I have the ability to get with them is because of brand loyalty, and that's a loyalty within the dealership. If I start buying my Lusso here and buy this there and buy that there, all of a sudden that relationship is gone, and you're going to ultimately be in no better position than any other customer that walks in off the street. So what I can tell you from my advice would be to go find a dealer, one that you get along with, somebody that you can communicate well with and see eye to eye with. Buy a used car from them, take it there for service as well, and keep that relationship. I'm the same way with McLarens. You have Door Group, they have Frankfurt of Ferrari, Stuttgart, and Munich, and I only work with them because that's the relationship that I have. Now, as far as the McLaren stuff goes, I'm happy to entertain, supporting things with the taxi program and things like that, but that's on the other side. But when it comes to buying my cars, I will only work with Door Group. And when it comes to buying the Ferraris, I will only go to Frankfurt Ferrari because that's where the relationship is. And if you want to be able to buy Ferraris, that's something you need to do as well. The dealership has a lot of pull, and they're going to be your biggest advocate when it comes time to buy your first new Ferrari and spec it and do all the design work, okay? So let's see what else we have here. Not sure if it's been asked, but how do the relative service intervals compare to the other light cars of similar performance? Same thing, every manufacturer recommends once a year if you're going for oil changes and whatnot. If you're going to use the car on track, then you should do it based on the mileage and more often. I prefer to do it twice a year, but still the Pista was at 5,000 kilometers, so it probably on average ended up getting an oil change every 1,500 kilometers, which is ridiculous, but a car like that needs to be maintained and kept intact. Let's see, Speciale versus Pista, which one and why? Both great cars. Pista is the better performing car, more composed car. The Speciale is the more playful and the more energetic car. If I were to get one right now, I think you guys know that I'm leaning more towards excitement versus just all-out speed. So the Speciale is interesting in that regard, but at the same time, the Pista is beautiful. So it's really a toss-up. I think you need to decide, do you want a turbo motor or do you want a naturally aspirated screamer? Both of them were extremely reliable and extremely fun cars, and hands down the Pista is the faster car. What's the next Ferrari that you will buy? Definitely a Lusso. GTC4 Lusso is a car that I really enjoy. I had an FF. I did over 30,000 kilometers by the time we sold the FF, and I absolutely enjoyed it. Tons and tons of fun. Great fun for the family. The back seat, I can sit in the driver's seat, set the seat, then get behind me and put the seat back, then do the same in the passenger and sit behind me as a rear passenger. So 4 of me can sit in there. I'm 189 centimeters, 6'2", and I can sit in that car in every position with the seat ready for me to sit in it. So great car, great family car. Obviously not tons of storage room if you have the family, but it should be pretty good. Is the 720 horsepower real? I do think that the horsepower of the car is real. We did some high-speed runs with the 720S and the Pista, and definitely the 720S pulls away from it. But we also know that the 720S is probably making 40 horsepower more than they claim. So I do think that the 720S is real. How much is insurance? Very cool question. Insurance on the 488 or any Ferrari is very well controlled. I would say it's about 40% less than what I pay on the McLarens. And the reason is that Ferrari has a very good network that they work with their insurance companies, and they actually negotiate special premiums for their customers on their cars. And that's something that I would also say is a huge bonus to buying a Ferrari if you're looking at being one of your early cars. The insurance on it is very, very reasonable compared to the likes of a McLaren or maybe even a Lamborghini. So something to look at is the insurance costs are, I would say, reasonable on the car. I'm not going to say exactly what I paid because I don't know what everybody else is paying and I don't want to stir anything up, but someone might come say they're paying less than me, some might come say they're paying more than me, but it is very reasonable. Like I said, about 40% less than what I pay on the McLarens. Another one for insurance costs, that's good. Not for track use, but just general street use. Most insurances in Germany cover the Nürburgring for Touristenfahrten. You obviously need to look in your insurance for a clause on that. After having had a number of them, do you still get a sheer buzz of picking up a new car? Does it become less exciting? I'm fortunate to get one new car every 3 years, and I get a buzz every time. Yes, I do get excited every time we go to get a new car. I get excited about speccing the car, and when we get to go pick it up, and I get excited about sharing it with people. So those are 3 things that are or maybe it was more than 3, I don't know. Those are all points that I really do enjoy. The thing that I don't get excited about is all of the new cars that I see coming out. That's really what's more daunting, and it takes away from the new car that you have. You just buy a Pista, and by the time you've even got it on the road, 8 other manufacturers have come out with their new track special. And then you have to feel like, do I need to get in this rat race of having the newest, latest, greatest, and best car? That actually takes away a little bit from the whole ownership experience of the other cars. Yeah, that's still good. That's still good. I got Tom's stamp here. He agrees.
Yo.
He wants one. I should have made him one, huh? Let's see. Reliability. I did a video on that and I talked about that, and the reliability was actually top notch. Not one check engine light, not one oil leak, not one loose bolt. Car was perfect in that regard. Still a beautiful car. I agree. I think it's still a beautiful car. Thank you very much. How was my dealership experience? I think you guys know that the dealer knows exactly what I do with the car. They support me in that regard. And top-notch people. I've become friends with several of the people in the dealership, and I really enjoy going there. And that's part of the reason why I said earlier that I won't buy a car anywhere else. Even if the perfect car on the used market that I wanted was sitting at another dealer, I would ask, could they negotiate it for me, or I would just pass on it. And I think that's something that comes difficult these days. People want something now, and they're willing to put aside a relationship for that. And I don't think that's the right way to do business. Your Ferrari dealer can be your biggest advocate when you need him to be. Cost of regular pads and service, brake discs, etc. When comparing with the GT2. Ferrari brake discs are cheaper than McLaren and Ferrari. Brake pads are more expensive than Porsche, but less than McLaren. So we'd say they're right in the middle. And the consumption on the brake pads goes Porsche in the best position, Ferrari in the middle, McLaren in the worst. So you've got that's the way that works. Tire consumption, the best is Porsche, middle Ferrari, worst is McLaren. I think that probably just about covers it. The McLaren's the most expensive, the Ferrari's in the middle, and the GT2 is the cheapest to operate. That also comes down to this around carbon fiber parts and things like that. The GT2 has a front splitter on it that costs 900 bucks or less. The Ferrari has one that's quite expensive, and the McLaren as well. I believe the Ferrari and McLaren front splitters are around 12,000 euro. I told you I scraped up the bottom diffuser on the Pista. Ferrari charges 12,000 euro for that diffuser, and it's not cheap. It's not a cheap thing to have to replace. Porsche is designed with all of these trim pieces in this plastic that so many people say, oh, you should get that in carbon. They're designed to be replaced cheap because they know they get scraped up on the track. So the Porsche is going to be the best bargain for knocking out a ton of laps. But how do the different cars make you feel? How do you enjoy driving them? That's a big difference, okay? Let's see. Why did I sell it? Like I said, I was just done with the car, had a great experience with it, and I was very happy with it. If you were to get into Ferrari ownership, what would be the recommended car to start with? And it's also based on depreciation, so they like to know what car's already done depreciating, what one makes the most sense. It's a tricky question, and I think it's a simple one for me to answer from my experience, but I would recommend a 458 Italia if you want to go to a used car that's already seen a lot of depreciation. And you might say, oh, 430's depreciated more, blah, blah, blah. The thing about the 458 is it was absolutely bulletproof. To me, it's when Ferrari turned a corner and actually started building cars that were modern day, with modern day technology and modern day reliability. It's the first car, I believe, that had the 7-year service included. It obviously meant that Ferrari made some changes and they knew, you know what, this platform is going to be reliable. And based on my use from the 458 Italia to the 458 Speciale, it was absolutely a reliable, bulletproof car. It has depreciated, and the 458 has leveled off in terms of their values, and I think that would be a very good entry car for somebody. And to be honest with you, it's a car that I would still consider buying again. I had a beautiful Rosso Corsa 458 Italia. Loved that car. Maximus was a baby when we got it, and it's one of the cars that he developed his love for cars inside of, and I think it's a really, really cool car and a special car that you'd have a lot of fun with. A car that I wouldn't mind buying with 30, 40, 50,000 kilometers on it, and knowing that it's probably going to work out just fine. Let's see, what else do we have? I think this is running pretty long. So this is good. Ferrari years ago had some reputation of being unreliable. That ties in very nicely with what I just said, that I think the tables really turned with the 458. Some of you guys might say it even started with the 430, but I think what they learned in that generation really came into play in the 458. Somebody said when you made the alignment videos at Manti Racing, you mentioned that the Pista isn't the type of car you wanted to go all out in terms of modification to set it up for the track as you did with the GT2. What about the Pista that makes you not willing to do that? It's absolutely beautiful. The car is beautiful. I don't want to put a big wing on the back. You know, there's something about a Ferrari when you get in it and you get behind the steering wheel, you see the cavallino, and the way that Ferrari builds it, there's a lot of passion in the look and the design of it. And I feel that that is something that could be and should be preserved. And I'm happy to keep it that way. The GT2 RS looks like a GT3 RS. It looks like a turbo with a wing on the back of it. I don't think it has that same prestige and that same beauty that when you walk up to the car that you want to see it completely cambered out with the suspension torn out, figuring out how to fix a wing on the back to get the rear end planted. And to me, it just has a different image and a different feel to it. The GT2 RS is amazing. It's badass. You walk up to it and it looks exactly like the Porsche race cars do. You put it next to a cup car, it looks like a cup car. And I think that there's a little bit different heritage between the Pista to what their race cars are versus what the GT2 is to their race cars. And that's really the bottom line of why my opinion is that. This is actually interesting. I'll end it with this. Somebody asks right here, that I know you like to use the cars on TF. However, what do you think about buying something like a challenge car? Would it be more cost effective and more reliable to use a race car for your track kilometers instead of a Pista? I think that we can probably answer that really quickly in the sense that you know that I made out pretty decently with the price of the Pista. If I were to buy a challenge car, I would not get that. The challenge car will depreciate at quite a rapid rate because there's a very small market for a challenge car. because it can only be driven on the racetrack. It can't be driven on the street. And that's the other big problem for me, is I need cars that I can drive road legal, because the Nürburgring during tourist drives is considered, it's not a public road, but it's considered, it's seen as a public road for those events. So I would be very limited in the times that I could drive a 488 challenge car. This last year, I probably only drove on 3 or maybe 4 track days, and I did each one that I drove on for a half a day. One track day I only did 1 lap because I was like, oh, I'll just go do a lap real quick. So it wouldn't be effective for me. The cost of the brakes are going to be no less. The one thing that you need to keep in mind is that race cars have service intervals. They say at so many kilometers you need to rebuild the transmission, the suspension, the engine needs to be rebuilt. They have intervals that all these cars have to be rebuilt, and if you don't uphold those, the price devalues tremendously. If I'm going to go take out a race car and drive it at 80%, I probably don't need to rebuild the suspension every 10,000 kilometers. However, if I don't rebuild the suspension every 10,000 kilometers, that's going to reduce the value. If I'm going out and driving the car at 80% and I'm not getting into full boost all the time, I'm just having a nice drive, I probably don't need to rebuild the motor at 30,000 kilometers. I could probably go to 50, but if I take it to 40 and I try and sell it, then my value is going to be greatly reduced. So there's a lot of things like this that I don't think for my use right now that a race car is ideal. That could change eventually if I get more into track driving, but I'm really enjoying taking the cars, setting them up, and having a very small variety, but I'm not doing a ton of laps now. I was getting up to 1,000 laps a season. Now this year, I mean, obviously we had COVID closures and everything, I'm probably down to around 750 laps this year, which I know is not a small amount, but if you take and spread that over 15 cars, it really isn't that much use on the car. So no, for my use, the Pista road car is the perfect car. A 620R is the perfect car. 675 LT, GT2R SMR. These are all the perfect cars for me. This is a similar concept as to why I don't need to run a Senna, why I don't need to run a GM, a Gordon Murray T50, why I don't need to run an AMG 1 and all these cars, because you're not going to take a €1 million+ hypercar, take it on the Nürburgring, and turn out as well as you did with the Pista. If I go and put maybe 20,000 kilometers on a Senna, first of all, I don't think the reliability is going to be there, and I don't think that the resale market is going to be there. I'm not interested in losing €400,000 or €500,000 on a car just to drive it on the Nürburgring. Maybe to go do the occasional sprint around a racetrack, a GP track that's flat, that it's not going to scrape everywhere, maybe that would be fun. But for what I'm doing with the cars, this is the perfect segment. Anyways, really was excited to go through. Like I said, this is the first time I've actually scrolled through these questions. Really was neat for me to do that and more have a conversation with you guys. And like I said, I don't want to have this clickbait thing where I prepared a list and calculations of how much money I made, how much money I lost, but more have a little bit of a dialogue so you guys can see what it's like to get into supercar ownership. A lot of you guys, and this is something I'm really proud of the channel, is that we have people from all different ranges, from in school to doing the daily grind, all the way through owning several supercars, hypercars, etc. And you guys are watching this channel, and I hope that I can help you guys understand what it's like to own these cars, what it's like to operate these cars, and hopefully help you get into these cars one day, whether it be just from how does it work, or even a mindset. What mindset do you need to have to be successful having these cars in your garage? Maybe even how can you take some of these concepts and put them into your daily life, your work life, so you can say, hey, you know what, if I'm a little bit more open-minded and I see things from many aspects, maybe that'll help me in my professional development, that I could actually own these cars as well one day, because I think that's probably a lot of your guys' dream for the future, or it's a dream that you've already checked off. But again, thank you guys so much for all the ideas. The comment section, when I read it, it really is awesome. I look at many YouTube videos and I think, man, this guy needs my comment section because you guys are giving the ideas for the videos, you're giving the content, and you're giving me the support, because I can tell you that for me at 10 o'clock at night, it's not on Thanksgiving, it's not the easiest thing to say, I'm gonna go sit down and make a video. But when I read your guys' encouraging comments, I'm like, you know what, I gotta do this. And that's really what keeps me going. So thank you guys again. Hope this video wasn't too long. Hope it wasn't too boring. Let me know what you think about the comments that I made. Let me know what you think about my Pista. You've seen it. We'll put a link to a lap video that I did recently in the car, so you guys can check that out if you haven't seen it before. But other than that, have a great Thanksgiving. Even if you're not American, enjoy it, and have a great weekend. We'll catch you guys later. Thank you so much.